Welcome to the Inclusive Growth Show with Toby Mildon. Future-proofing your business by creating a diverse workplace.
Hey there, thank you ever so much for tuning into this episode of the Inclusive Growth Podcast. I'm Toby Mildon, and today I'm joined by Andrew Jenkins. And Andrew has got a background working in academia, and he's got a specialist interest in researching and talking about age discrimination and inclusivity across different age generations within the workplace. So, Andrew, thanks ever so much for joining me today. It's lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you, and thanks for having me.
So could we just start could you just tell us a bit more about yourself and give an overview of your career so far and what really led you to being interested in age discrimination?
Okay, so just a brief overview. So until August last year, I was senior lecturer at the Business School, University of Huddersfield. And before that, I was subject group lead or divisional head of marketing events, hospitality, tourism, also at the University of Huddersfield. So at the end of August last year, at the age of almost 60, 59 and a half, I took voluntary severance or early retirement. And I now have two part-time jobs as lecturer in management at Cumbria University and as tutor in business at the International Study Centre, which is based at the University of Huddersfield. So I did think that I would want to continue working full time, but working part time, taking my occupational pension, one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I now have more time to enjoy life. I feel that I have a good balance between work and leisure. Before I started working as senior lecturer at the University of Huddersfield in 1999, a long time ago now, I worked in the civil service in the Netherlands for 10 years. So I have a doctorate in age discrimination in employment from the University of Strathclyde with a focus on the hospitality industry employment. I'm also a member of the CIPD and CMI, and I've published many papers on work and employment over the years. My most recent paper in Hospitality Insights Journal was titled, "Are Older Workers a Saviour for the UK Hospitality Industry, Given Recruitment Problems Post-Brexit?"
That's really interesting. Was there anything in particular that really piqued your interest to kind of lead you towards researching age discrimination within employment? Like, why was that a particular topic that you were really interested in?
Okay, so until I chose the topic, my research previously focused on sexuality in employment, as I'm interested in how someone's sexuality affects their chances for employment, given my own sexuality. But shortly after starting my doctorate, I changed focus because I was getting older myself and I was becoming interested in how this would affect my life, but also other people. And also in terms of hospitality, the industry tends to focus on younger workers. It has the youngest age profile of any industry. So if we look at figures from the Office for National Statistics, the youngest workers, those aged 16 to 24 years, make up 10% of total workforce, but they make up around half of the workers in some hospitality roles, including waiters and waitresses, 50% bar staff, 48% coffee shop workers, 48%. Also, report from the UK's Office for National Statistics states that hospitality businesses are more than twice as likely as other industries to be experiencing challenges in filling vacancies. And the report also commented that the number of job vacancies in hospitality was at a record high, with 3 in 10 hospitality businesses experiencing recruitment difficulties. But this is nothing new. Recruitment and retention problems have existed for a very long time in the hospitality industry. And my question is, or was, could older workers help hospitality businesses deal with problems of employee recruitment and retention? So this led me to undertake research on older worker recruitment over the past 20 years.
So from the research that you've done through your academic work and the papers that you've written and published, what are some of the findings that you've found in regards to older workers within the hospitality sector?
Okay, well, for starters, the negative stereotyping of older workers by managers act as a barrier to recruitment. There's a perception by some managers, at least, that older workers are less productive, more resistant to change, take more time off sick, have more limited technological competence, and are less trainable. It is these largely unfounded negative stereotypes that tend to pervade rather than positive stereotypes of greater loyalty, a stronger work ethic, and being more reliable. But a lot of discrimination is very subtle. It's nuanced. For example, job ads being placed on social media, which might act against older workers. I found that some managers claimed that they hired younger people because of the customer base. But in my experience, this was an excuse. They were just prejudiced against older workers. So I remember doing research in one hotel, and I had a meeting with, I believe it was the human resource manager. And I had statistics on the age profile of workers in the hotel. There were a lot of workers. I can't remember exactly how many, but about 100. And nobody was aged over 37. And I was told in a meeting that, the customers were all under that age. Well, and during dinner and a breakfast the next day, quite clearly, that was absolutely not the case. So I think there's prejudice going on against older workers. I think recruiters are used to focusing on younger workers, going to schools, colleges, universities, focusing on them. And therefore, quite often, they don't even think about recruiting older workers. But a lot of older workers actually are interested in a career in the hospitality industry. So, for example, a 2023 survey of 1,000 job seekers aged 50 and older revealed that 70% of respondents said they would consider a career in hospitality. But most of them, 88%, also think that hospitality businesses prefer hiring younger people. Now, there are nearly 3 million people over 50 in the UK that would consider a job in the hospitality industry. But if hospitality businesses wish to employ older workers, they really need to address older job seekers' perceptions about the age preference of employers.
Yeah. As we were preparing for this podcast, I remember you told me a good case study of B&Q. Can you share that with us?
I certainly can. So there's an interesting example case study of B&Q. I think we all know B&Q. It's the home improvement garden centre retailer. So they launched a grey revolution, it was called, with a number of measures aimed at attracting and retaining older employees. So it once staffed its Macclesfield store with staff aged over 50, and it found that it worked so well that the company decided to recruit older workers to all its stores. So B&Q launched this initiative because of recruitment difficulties. And they also felt that older workers would be more likely to have knowledge and experience in the DIY trade, resulting in better customer service. When Warwick University evaluated an over 50s store against other stores, it found that the over 50 store topped the list in most measures. Now, I'm not advocating that businesses should staff their workplaces only with workers aged over 50. I'm a firm believer in the merits of a multi-generational workforce. I feel that older workers can learn from younger workers and vice versa. There is an interesting report. It's called Working Together, Maximizing the Opportunities of a Multi-Generational Workforce. It's a very recent report from last year by the Work Foundation at Lancaster University. So that has a lot of insight into managing multi-generational workforces.
Brilliant. So what impact does hiring or equally not hiring older workers have on our economy, do you think?
Okay, well, for one thing, the UK's population is aging. That's indisputable. The older population is getting larger, whilst the younger population is decreasing in size. People are on average living longer fortunately, because of better healthcare. Women on average are having fewer children. As the UK's population ages, so will its workforce. And the economic success of the UK will increasingly be linked to that of older workers. I'd also like to mention Brexit. Well, I'd not like to mention it, but I will, because I feel it's exacerbated worker shortages. So according to the Financial Times in 2022, hospitalities in the UK have lost 2 million workers since the end of 2019. It's likely that many of these were EU nationals and they've returned to their home country. Post-Brexit, hospitality businesses in the UK are, for the most part, unable to tap into large pool of EU workers who might have come to the UK to work. And the introduction of a points-based immigration system in the UK means that most hospitality industry jobs are ineligible for sponsorship. I mean, also during the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'm sure we all remember, as most hospitality businesses closed, hospitality workers had to find other employment, and many found employment in other industries and didn't return to the hospitality industry. So I think employing older workers won't be a savior, but it certainly will help with recruitment and retention problems.
So the people that often listen to this podcast are working in HR, or they're diversity and inclusion leaders or senior leaders in an organization. What's your advice to them about preventing age discrimination in the workplace, or attracting and recruiting older workers so that they can benefit from this talent pool?
Yeah, very interesting question, Toby. So I think not just hospitality organizations, it relates to all organizations really. They really need to develop targeted recruitment campaigns which focus on older people, need to have flexible working arrangements. In the case of hospitality, improve the perception of the industry as a good place to work, and importantly, address any negative stereotypes relating to older workers. But I certainly believe that the hospitality businesses can benefit from employing more older workers, and other governments, many governments, Canada, Australia, for example, have produced reports and advice. The Australian government's Trade Investment Commission advocates that hospitality businesses might look for skills amongst the older demographic, for example. So whilst not being a panacea, focus on recruitment retention of older workers could go some way towards being a saviour for the hospitality industry.
Brilliant. Now, the question I ask everybody when they come on this show is, what does inclusive growth mean for you?
Okay. Well, I've thought about this. It's a short answer, but hopefully relevant and pertinent. So there does appear to be a backlash against EDI initiatives in many places of the world, unfortunately. I believe that HR professionals need to make the case for these initiatives, diversity initiatives, equality, inclusion initiatives as part of the growth agenda. Sustainability, responsibility, ethics should be the core of business decision-making, and a focus on EDI is, for me, essential in achieving sustainable growth.
Brilliant. Well, Andrew, thanks ever so much for joining me on today's episode. It's been really great to hear from you and hear your insights and your recommendations on how we can be more inclusive for older workers. So thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you. Can I just recommend, before we wrap up the podcast, there's a number of resources I'd like to recommend. So there's a CIPD 2022 report on understanding older workers. There's the Centre for Aging Better website, which includes a guide for employers. There's an article on how older workers can beat skill shortages. That's by Mary Bright in Personnel Today, 22nd of April, 2022. And Age UK website, Ageism at Work.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for sharing those resources. They'll be really useful for businesses listening if they're interested in attracting and recruiting and retaining more older workers in their workforce. So, Andrew, thanks ever so much for joining us today. And thank you for tuning into this episode. Hopefully, Andrew's given you some food for thought on how you can attract and recruit and retain older workers, the benefits of having a multi-generational workforce, and some really practical things that you can do to increase the age profile in your organization. So I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the podcast, which will be coming up very soon. Until then, take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Inclusive Growth Show. For further information and resources from Toby and his team, head on over to our website at mildon.co.uk.